I'm supposed to be at work, so. All right. I think people are at work, so they're going to come in a little late. But even if they don't, me and you are going to have a great conversation. Yo, so I'm going to let this loop. We're probably going to come back around to it. So, Darrin, just be patient with me. Before I introduce you, I just want to speak to some of the people that I've scheduled to have on as guests. Look, y'all going to have to forgive me. Your boy has been drowning. There's been a lot going on in the Fennell house, a lot going on at work. And then just when I thought that, I had some, had everything in control, had my schedule together, my routine together with my kids and my family and work, this damn Kendrick Lamar and Drake beef pop off. And so I've been extremely distracted. So shout out to my guest. Hope you guys are still open to coming in and coming on and blessing the platform with your presence. There's a lot to talk about, man. And I want to talk to you guys. So forgive me. I know you guys have probably been distracted with this whole Drake and K Dot fiasco. It's been pretty dope to watch. I can't wait to break it down. I plan on doing that with a couple guests of mine here in the near future. So stay tuned to that. But I want to know what y'all think. Who's winning this battle? Type 1 in the chat if you believe that Drake's winning, and type 2 if you believe that K Dot's winning. Me personally, I think K Dot won, and I think Drake's barely hanging on. He's more addressing allegations than ripping K Dot apart. So to me, that's waving the white flag. But yeah, man, shout out to everybody that is following that whole thing, and shout out to people that are spending or giving me some time to listen, sparing your time to listen to me rumble and mumble. I appreciate that. I wanted to have this season focusing on the continuum. I believe that we are in a very pivotal point in our society that is made and tailored to bring in a transition of leadership, to bring in new leaders, to bring in a new direction for our country and the world. I have decided to title this season Continuum, the Continuum, season of Continuum. And within that, I want to talk to guests about their thoughts on where we're at now. And I want to have guests on to talk about where we've come from, historians. Shout out to my boy, my OG, Jamal Skinner. That's one historian I can't wait to have on to chop it up about the history of our country. I'm interested in seeing what he thinks about where we're headed. I think it's anybody that may be an entrepreneur or someone that have some level of influence. Is a good time for you to be alive and help shape the direction of our country. I think if we leave it up to AI and the one percenters, I think we'll see more of the last 50, 100 years of society. So I got with me today, though, one of my homies. I ain't gonna lie, y'all. I thought this man was the feds. Yeah, I thought he might have been, high level CIA at one point. Hell, I even thought that he was part of what's that one group that was down there as part of J6? What's that group called? It's gonna come to me and I'm gonna bring it up. But I thought this man was many things: FBI agent, assassin. And then I seen his Facebook profile on the motorcycle. He looked real hard. I thought he was Action Jackson there for a minute too. But I got with me today my brother Darrin Scott. Darrin, welcome to VRP, sir. How are you?
I'm doing very well. I'm very honored to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I appreciate you for being here. Sorry about the long introduction. But, man, I'm going to tell you, you my dog, man. And I love chatting it up with you. This is going to be our second episode together? Third, yes. Third episode together. And I think I already can't wait for our fourth one because I feel like this one's going to be dope. But I think the more that we build on and the more conversations that you and I have, the more flow that we have in our and our conversations. And so, shout out to brother Michael Anthony Tapman. He's out in Colorado. I hope your day's going good. Hey, he said, "Hey, Darrin, Michael Tapman said you is the feds." I ain't hating, right? I ain't hating. But yeah, so appreciate you again for coming on, brother. I look forward to having a discussion with you. And like I said in the opening, one of the reasons why I did want to have you on is because I feel like you're on the realist. Anytime that we've talked, it's been about society. We look at how society is operating right now, and for me, I feel like we're at a stalemate unless we welcome different visions and different leaders in to share their visions about the direction our country could go. I'm not an expert in any particular field. I'm not a know-it-all. I don't have all the answers. I do enjoy doing research and reading. In addition to that, I feel like I have some pretty good ideas. I love my community. I've been able to break myself down and work to put myself back together, which is going to be an everyday process. But I do realize what I'm looking at. I do realize what's contributed to some of my failure. And I feel like society has been shaped and set up for certain people to fail. And so I really wanted you to come on to talk about the continuum that we're at right now. A few years ago, I want to say in 2018, when I lived in Colorado, this idea and this thought of and this vision of a continuum curve came to my mind. And so I really tried to work it out and write it out as best I could. And if you can and you had time, go back into some of my previous episodes. I tried to do my best explanation, share my best explanation of the continuum curve. And again, that was a vision that I was inspired by one day. I feel like God put it on my heart and my mind to really kind of make sense of where we're at. But I feel like a continuum is mostly really kind of reflecting back on where we've come from in history to where we're at now and where we want to go. And I think if we allow the 1% and AI to dictate where we want to go, I think we'll see more of the same. And so before we jump into it, man, how's everything been going?
Everything's been going pretty well.
Yeah.
My son is 16. He's playing tennis now. Chelsea just got her family a new 6-room hostel down in Costa Rica.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she took, I really think the amount of mothers who have stepped up into business roles and the moment, especially mothers of Black children, the amount of women that I know who stepped up in the business role in their family and then got their children out of America has been increasing in the professional space. Literally, it's one of the most amazing things to be seeing. But large picture, it's going left and right. We just started a forestry initiative here in Fort Collins. Nice. We're having community talks. The equality centers are back up and running. The domestic violence centers have less people being housed there now, so it shows that we're making progress in those directions. And we have more and more veterans making successful transitions. So things are going very well.
That's awesome, man. Whatever y'all are doing out there for the houseless or the unhoused population, man, share that blueprint for it with us, because we've got a little bit of a problem here, man. And I don't know if you've seen in the national news, but our great governor has made it against the law to be without housing and homeless and sleeping where you can. I don't think that's constitutional. It seems like being unhoused is more of like a condition versus like a choice in breaking the law. But where else are they going to go, right? And so there's a law now here that you can get a ticket for being unhoused and sleeping on the side. What do you think? What do you think about that?
I am not a expert on being homeless. Yeah. I have, even though thank you.
Yeah.
I have been homeless twice. However, the majority of my homeless experience, I had the military to be able to turn to. And being chronically homeless, I think I've only been homeless like a total of maybe like 5 years of my life. During that time, I did get to see many aspects of people being homeless. there is a genuine amount of people who are at risk and do not know how to operate in regular society, and they
Mhm.
really do need help.
Yeah.
Centering back on what you said about breaking laws, it's not illegal to be homeless. It is illegal to be homeless and break into the back end of a bank
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
and sleep there drunk. It
Right.
is illegal to break into, I don't know, a biological lab, or even worse, the city's water facility.
Wow.
It is illegal to break into these places because human presence there causes a risk to those things.
Right.
You've had whole food production lines shut down from people breaking into the building, messing up the seeds, the contamination ratios. We've had all kinds of things. It is illegal to break into certain places. As far as being on the street, we have had, from what I've seen in San Francisco, we have many homeless people who, and especially here in Denver, who bounce in between being homeless 1 minute and then being an adamant protester slash possible threat to local law enforcement the next.
Mm.
And then boom, oh no, they're protected class, they're homeless, because we've passed so many different laws to protect and house and guard the homeless and get them going. And then we have the people who are the RVers who like to dump. Like, long story short, they only make laws when a certain amount of damage is being done.
Mm.
Limiting people's individual freedoms is wrong. It's not right. There's a conversation that we need to be had. And there is a conversation to be had for responsibility, cleanup, and proper environmental management. As far as them just making laws to make it illegal to be homeless, I think that's wrong.
Yeah.
There's much
Yeah.
more to go about it than just
Right.
outlawing homelessness. That is not going to work.
Right.
So that's
And
my thoughts on
no, I love it, and I agree with a lot of your logic and what you said. Um, but you should face the law in the circumstances if you're going to go and cause havoc, to
it.
institutions or establishments, people that are serving the community.
And they
But
should, yeah. And on the
yeah,
other end, they should feel like they're going to get a fair shot
right,
with the
right, right,
law when they meet.
yeah,
It should be on both
yeah,
sides. So
right,
yeah,
yeah,
sorry.
yeah, yeah. And in addition to that, though, I feel like it's like if you don't have the proper education, or if you've had these mistakes that you've made and they show up on your record and you just can't get a job, and it results into you being without housing. I really believe that's a condition at some point, like that you can't really help that, and then you tack on the mental health illnesses that they may be experiencing that's keeping them from work. It's almost like, and I hate to say it, and it sounds weird as I'm preparing to have it come out of my mouth, but like it's like sleep where you can, but then there are, like, you don't want you don't want to walk out your front door and see a homeless person just sleeping there, and so it's definitely a sticky thing, sticky situation. There's a lot to it, and I just hate to hear, and it sounds awful that someone's going to get a ticket because they have nowhere else to sleep, and so they sleep outside. So it's definitely a sticky situation. And I think if we're looking at the continuum of society or social continuum, you can't look too far past that, because it seems like it's a trend that's on an upward trend. It's I hate to see my kids fall in those circumstances, but they're not too far removed from that possibility. I could do everything in my power to make sure that they have all the tools they need, but I'm sure there's someone out there that's experiencing houselessness that may have a degree. I'm sure there's someone out there that's probably got support, wealthy families, and probably don't want to take any support from their families, so they would much rather be homeless. But that might result to a mental health condition, in fact. But nonetheless, like, giving them a ticket, like, do we expect them to be able to afford it? And how realistic is that? Could they, if they can't afford it, will they be picked up on warrants, and then they'll have to sit it out, and then maybe within that they can get rehab treatment? You know what I mean? But I think it's really something that we should definitely draw more interest in, people of our age group, to see what we can do as far as solutions and better results. But like I said, I'm not an expert in any of this, but this is just how I feel. I feel passionate
I,
about it.
no, that's fine. I'll give a counter good example of how people are handling the homeless. Out here in Fort Collins, they have, the best thing about Fort Collins is how few people we have here. So if there are a few homeless people, we can build an apartment complex for 200 people and take
Right.
care of them. Building housing for 10,000 people, that's a whole different, feeding them, like that's if they all agree, show up on time, stay inside during the actual elected hours. But long story short, they built housing for their homeless here in Fort Collins after they found out the majority of the homeless people here were elderly.
Mm.
So they
Wow.
just moved them in, and then they went down the line. Social security number. Oh, you're 72 with dementia. Well, we're just going to
Wow.
put you right here, and we'll fill out your paperwork as we go. And here are your state benefits, right? Ran them through the police department for people who were not sure to find their records as fast as possible. It was when we first interacted with the homeless population, we thought it was going to be a bunch of people in their 30s, 40s, down and out, bunch of addicts, so on and so forth. When we found out that it was, to answer your question about could they afford it, many of them can.
Mm.
When you take away rent and a car payment, you'd be surprised how much money people can save.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
trying
Yeah.
to get up to that $10,000 mark to do the deposit, the down payment, and so on and so forth. Many of these homeless people show up with cars paid off, phones, Xboxes, TVs, dogs, cats. They have wills, trusts, bank accounts. Um,
Wow.
one of the biggest misconceptions that law enforcement and the city made coming into this was thinking that this was a group of people with nothing.
Mm.
And then we found out about the people with divorces and criminal records and so on and so forth. And some of those people just don't want to come in. So it was kind of hectic. But once we removed the elderly and the veterans, it was almost 50% of the homeless problem was handled. And
Wow.
when you're left with the people who are homeless by choice, then that means it's up to the community to either welcome those people, support them there, or give them a deal somewhere in town to live. Otherwise,
Mm.
they're going to have to move on at some point.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's just how I've seen Fort Collins do it. And they have social workers on site. They have a team of people. So they have the sites that they house the homeless people at, and then they send the teams to the homes once a week. The teams go through, click, 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 click. Hey, paperwork, mailing address, driver's license, job application, blah, 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 go down the whole hallway once a week and just hit everybody for that one or two things that they're missing. And then after about like 3 to 6 months, they move that person out to their own apartment.
Wow.
And
That's
so
dope.
that is dope, but
Yeah.
that's only manageable when you have a city of less than 300,000 people. It's
Okay.
because we are not able to do what California did, where they just rehoused 600,000 people and then 40,000 people bounced out. Like they just got the money, didn't follow through on the program, and now they're homeless again.
Somewhere else though.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
California though. And that
Okay.
seeing that fallout with higher amounts of population is hard to look at. It's a very hard thing to deal with.
Yeah.
But this was one of the most successful things that we've seen. And then they built another housing center just for displaced veterans, which we also found out most of those displaced veterans were elderly, over the age of 65. Um,
Wow. And
and
those are
it's
the ones that really served wartime, wouldn't you say? Like that at that age?
Mhm.
Like what wars
Yeah,
could we say they served in
Vietnam,
Vietnam,
yeah,
right? What about
during
Desert Storm? Is that's
we have a lot of guys from Desert Storm who really give credit to the Vietnam era. And
mm,
we have guys from we have sit downs of veterans who get to meet each other from different eras. And the first thing that we do is we respect what they're up against. Like
mm,
none of us dealt with what our predecessors during the Civil War dealt with. And none of
yeah, yeah,
us,
yeah.
you know what I mean? And none of us dealt with what World War I, World War II dealt with. And then
Right,
they
right.
turn around and they say, hey, I will take a cannonball every now and again over uh, Iraq with a bomb hidden in every other piece of trash. And we have some people in Vietnam who say, I would never want to serve in Afghanistan. And
Mm,
so we note the differences of it. But the one war that everybody agree on is the one war that gave the American government a syndrome. Do you know what country gave the American government a syndrome? The one country we fucked with them in the 90s. Try
In the
to break
90s.
up one of their civil wars. And we made a
Syria.
movie about it. No, not Syria.
You gonna have to put me on game. What
It's
war
called
was
the
it?
Somalia syndrome.
Somalia syndrome.
It's called the Somalia syndrome. It's a real syndrome.
Really? Tell me about that.
Long story short, America went to Somalia. They had a civil war. We tried to tell them, don't do this. And then the UN tried to send in like packages and stuff. Long story short, warlords in Somalia are not to be crossed.
Yeah,
They are not to be
I can
crossed.
tell by movies. Yeah,
They have a whole city of people who can run up to 25 miles and will shoot.
right,
If
right.
they don't
Yeah,
have
yeah, yeah.
guns, they will run at you and try to take yours and use yours against you. Their tactics, their human wave tactics, their overnight tactics, their relentless ability to be able to coordinate in their local communities. Because in Somalia, it's fast. They get together, they plan, they execute. There is no, oh, we're gonna take like 5-6 days to get back to. Nah, they attacked us. We attacking tonight. Who's with us? And that's how they move. And it drove the US out, it drove the UN out, it drove out their enemies, it drove
Wow.
out, gave the now when the US has anything to do with Africa, it's a stated fact called the Somalia syndrome. People stop and they say, is this worth it? Who are we going up against?
Yeah,
Because
it's
before,
guaranteed bloodshed.
yeah, before Somalia, it was we're going there, bub. After Somalia, we should check the budgets, go over the safety briefs.
Yeah,
We should make sure no.
yeah, yeah. This is
They were,
tread lightly.
because they did everything. They did guerrilla warfare. They did IEDs. They did drone strikes. They did shooting down helicopters. They did dragging
Damn.
bodies to the streets. They burned buildings. They burned tires in the middle of City Square to cause smoke screens so we couldn't see through it. Like it's something else.
Let me ask you this, Darrin, because we haven't had a chance to talk about this in our preliminary conversation, and it wasn't planned, and maybe we could move this down the road for our next episode.
Yeah.
Huh?
I'm sorry I wasted time on the.
No, you good. No, you're good. I'm glad we had that conversation on the phone. But and then again, like I said, you don't have to answer this, but what can we expect, or what are your thoughts on the continuum in regards to the Hamas Israel situation? Because I know that's the oldest part of the world, but as far as the citizens is so young in terms of the Gaza Strip and those citizens in the Arab community. I think they're probably one of the youngest populations in the world right now. And we can come back to this, like I said, but I've given some thought.
Who's one of the
Palestinian people?
Yes.
Iraq and Iran, those countries. Those are pretty young aged countries, wouldn't you say? I mean, based off the research that I've seen. But I've given some thought just briefly, and like I said again, I'm not an expert or a know-it-all, but I've just always been curious to what that domino effect of them being in war right now is going to be like. Like 30,000 people that they say have passed away, a lot of women and children. And I feel like it's going to stunt their growth. And I think potentially that could be, in the future, like countries you can trade with, And so have you given any thought on what that domino effect or the after effect would be like after this war? How to impact the world?
Just before I answer that question, there's a few things that we want to talk. One, these nations do have a younger generation, but they've been around for thousands of years.
Right. Yeah,
And on top of that also precludes that their conflicts have been around for thousands of years.
Always existed.
Yep. And in the same way that there is a bunch of family, state conflicts that we don't understand even here in the US, most US citizens do not understand what's happening over in the Middle East, like in the full context. We get the end results. We get what we think is right and wrong.
Right.
but the actual like full context of how that's going. The social continuum of America and how we look at Gaza is messed up because of what the world perceives America as. So to America, especially our young generation, it's Gaza, stop Gaza, blah, 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 blah. To the rest of the world, it's like, okay, does America care about anything else that they protested about the last 20 years? Where's the outrage for bring our girls back in North Africa? Where's the outrage for the pirates off the Somalian coast? Where's the outrage for the American soldiers who were killed in Iraq and Afghanistan? To the rest of the world, it almost seems like America has forgotten that. And now we have something else to be mad about. Because right now, we talk about the few 30,000 dead in Palestine. We don't talk about the 5.2 million dead or displaced in the civil wars in North Africa.
Right.
You kind of just, you have to, when the world sees America, they see Americans step over Black Lives Matter, step over Native Americans, step over the war on women, step over orphanages, adult homes, and our homeless stuff. And then we say, yeah, we mad about Gaza. It doesn't, there's a reason why there isn't this huge international output to Americans. Americans scare people in the international community because we bust down the door, we say we care, raise a few $1 million, and then completely forget. Look at how we treated Haiti.
Yeah.
Did we keep Haiti in our hearts and minds and make sure that they were plugged in and supported and had regular American community support members going down there and intervening and building up all of these structures that we say need to exist for equality? We didn't. And so, having been one of the veterans that's been on ground for operations like this, it's interesting to see, yes, the conflict in Gaza is bad. The Palestinian people are getting a bad deal. The main thing that's messing up the continuity of the international world and America is that the world sees America as like, all right, so when are you going to stop? When are you going to forget about these people? When are we going to take the Gaza signs down? Because we just took the Black Lives Matter signs down.
Right.
Every year we put up Valentine's, Christmas, so on and so forth. Christmas is what? So it's to be giving and merry and all. We shut that shit down as soon as the snow melt.
Right.
So what I'm saying is, if there is a consistent strategy for American citizens to help intervene in warfare, that's one thing. Americans who have not served in war, do not understand war, have never seen war, don't serve in any type of anti-war protest study logistics. Most of those people have no business speaking on what's happening.
Yeah.
If someone says murder is wrong, I understand that. If someone says children being murdered is wrong, I understand that. If someone says that America should jump in to intervene in Gaza and skip over all pre-existing contracts, skip over all of the things that the American people voted for when it comes to the government intervening with Middle East conflicts, which is what we did with Iraq and Afghanistan. We just pulled out of a Middle Eastern conflict because the American people voted for us to leave that. And there was no mass American vote for us to go back and look out for those Afghan and Iraqi people who were fucked over. I have yet to see any large American collective pushing back for us to pay back the Iraqi people for what they endured under Saddam and under the American-Iraqi conflict, as well as Afghan. And so now it's like, okay, cool. Like Gaza, and the world wants to know, what else does America care about? Because it really does. Like especially speaking with mothers from other religions and cultures outside of the US, because they refer to the American social structure like a religion. It is how it's seen. They don't see us as individual people. Like we are very, very different when it comes to meshing with the world. But that's my thought on the Gaza thing, is that people should learn Arabic. And if they really are against the war, they should actually get educated in the aspects of anti-war and start presenting policies and structures and resource plans in order to fix that.
Yeah. So if you out there listening, man, and you have the brain bandwidth and capacity to understand that stuff, and you're passionate about it, man, jump off the porch, because man, when I look at it, like you mentioned earlier, I see innocent people,
Mm-hmm.
and I see an oppressor and oppression, and that's an uneducated perspective. Like you said, there's so much to it, and I'd like to know more about it, but just on the general sense of it all, I can't help but to kind of associate what the Gazans are going through on a level of how my people have have endured similar situations. I don't want to say like bombs and stuff like that, but like you kind of think about my people and how they were shackled and chained and whipped here. I kind of can relate to what's going on to the Gazans. So it's an uneducated relatability, but it's just seeing it from social media, and that's just where my opinion's at. But so we got up to this point, man, and I'm sorry I didn't do a proper introduction, but before we dive right into it, I want to, I think it's logos, establish some logos. It may be logos. I don't know which one, logos or what is it? Rhetorical speech. Like, why should we listen to Darrin? So Darrin, tell us a little bit about your experience in the military. Why do you have this experience in the military? I know you have a real a passion for tax law and the economy. Where did that come from?
My original introduction to these types of discussions came from my parents. My dad was a cartographer and a map maker in the Navy for 28 years. Before that, he was a police
Okay,
officer.
wait. I'm sorry. I don't mean to cut you off, but what's a cartographer?
It's a map maker. It's a
Okay,
guy
okay,
who,
okay, okay.
it's the person on top of the ship who goes over everything that everybody knows and puts it onto individual maps and
Wow.
says, this is
Dang.
what it is. And watching my father argue with people, there were people who would hire my dad to overview maps, statistics, finances, so on and so forth. And then I would watch him work for weeks, and then he would bring that stuff in because they would ask him for stuff that pulled on economics, fuel burn rates, people, and then put that on a map. So this way people could see
Wow.
how far can we make it with these people, this, so on and so forth. And every time I would watch my dad get cut down. Every time. Can we do this cheaper? Are you sure you did the math right? Is this blah? And I would just watch him point at things and say 1 + 1 = 2. 2 + 2 = 4. We need 5 points of fuel to get that far. We only have 4. And they would come back and say, yeah, we get it, Evans. And I would be like looking at what my dad worked on, math, done, deal, from the report to the summary to the after review to alternative solutions to whatever they were trying to ask for. And as a kid, I would be like flipping through it, because he would bring it home and he would leave it in the garage and go to sleep. Then my mom joined the Marines to go into admin, and she would be hired to look up statistics and reports on personnel and burn rates and resources. And she would do the math, and then she would go in, and I would watch people throw the paperwork back at her and be like, this ain't right. Didn't even open the folder.
Wow.
So when I realized that, and then I joined the military at 18, my parents were very adamant on me like knowing how things work politically, financially, socially. And so that's what got me into it. Then I went into aviation operations, and that gave me a management overview on how to run an airport, which running an airport will tell you more about people than anything.
Really?
But that's, yeah. And then I signed up for some specialty task forces, got to go to Iraq, Afghanistan, and Germany. And then I came back, signed up with a tactical airspace integration team. And now I'm here running a nonprofit. It's a homeowner. So that's why you should listen to me, because I know what I'm doing. And you should listen to anyone who says that they want to listen to you as well. I don't want to speak.
Right.
I want to learn. I want to engage with people. I'm not looking for people to tell them what to do.
Right.
I'm new to the civilian game, but I'm very experienced with the government and economics game, and that's why I'm trying to learn how to mesh in. So yeah.
Yeah. That's
Uh,
beautiful, man. So you spent some time overseas. If listen, I've met Darrin in Fort Collins almost 5 years ago. We've had lunch together. We've had conversations together, plenty of conversations. And man, he is someone you definitely want to listen to. I'm telling you. And I think every season and every so often that we do this podcast, I want to make sure that I have a episode with you just to kind of see where your thinking's at.
mhm.
But man, let's get right to it. I think me and you've been back and forth on this. Again, I want to go in by saying I'm not an expert. I'm only going to be sharing how I feel and my opinions. I try to move my feelings to the side and really kind of just apply logic and just break it down as far as I can, complex logic. But when we look at our systems, man, and I'm looking at this from a civilian standpoint, limited education, but I do study and research, and I intertwine that with my experience, and I intertwine that with some of my relatives and loved ones and friends' experiences as well. And so, after doing some research and being involved as an activist for reparations in the Transformative Black Agenda with the American Descendants of Slavery Advocacy Foundation, I've become enlightened to systems and how things have been operating. And over the last 5 years, I've been learning about the American system and how the capitalistic society and the capitalistic economics and the economy. There's a theory, and it's been so far, I believe, proven to show to be an accurate theory that there needs to be a bottom for the 1% to exist. And the more research that I've done over the 5 years is, I'm trying to answer the question that I've had to myself is like, hey, why did I grow up in extreme poverty? Why are people that are in extreme poverty mostly look like me? And I found a lot of my answers within the ADOS movement. And so when I come to, my thinking to what is the continuum, why is it important, what is it going to look like in the future, I don't only look at myself and some of the things that I need to change about myself so the way I can do better in society, yield more positive results, and uplift my community. I had to work on myself, but also we've got to look at some of these systems. And so, I'm curious to what you're thinking is like, how does our current social continuum affect our national economy? Like I know the economics to it all. Like, again, it's the capitalistic society. The 1%'s calling all the shots. The bottom 1% or 5% are people that look like me. It's important that there's some adjustments be made within the system. I feel like it's not solely the individual's responsibility of why, there's so many disparities at the bottom level of the African American community, but there is. So that's what I see in our current social continuum. But how does that affect our national economy?
It destabilizes it.
Okay. So
And
a wealthless bottom destabilizes our economy?
not a wealthless bottom. We have to. So, who? That was a lot that you went over
Sorry, man. You know how I get to talking. You're going to have to forgive me, big dog.
there. I see what it is. There is a conversation to be had about individual responsibility and community, so on and so forth.
Right.
What I have realized is that the hidden costs of people not working together with their family, friends, and community have caused all of these extra markets to pop up, from big pharma to online fads and trends. Once any of those markets reach a certain saturation, a certain weight, a certain size, the government has to step in and say, okay, enough people have been hurt, enough people are losing money, enough people are being misaligned by this. We need to put some guardrails on it. And how do I think it affects? I think it destabilizes not because there's a bottomless class, or a bottomless, wealthless class. I think it's because of the average amount of actions between all three classes, the bottom, the middle, and the top. because it's not the top running everything. That clearly is not the case. Because
Okay. And I'm gonna challenge you there, and I hope you
yeah,
don't mind me playing a little bit of tunes in the background. But enlighten me and help me see it otherwise, because I feel like the 1% is calling the shots.
yes, economically they are. Economically they are because they represent the largest economic
Tax
pushes in the country.
taxpayers.
Yes. Uh, there is something to be said about the repression effect, which is where we crunch down on one class, open up freedoms for the other ones, and then we crunch down on the other two, open up for the other ones. And we've been doing that for years while blaming. Um, when we went to Florida, and we went to Germany, and we went to Sweden, and we got to meet people who were in the top 1% class, we did not meet people who had anywhere near the same level of animosity, stereotypes, or biases that people from the middle and lower classes had against them. It was crazy to see that. And whenever we went to any of these events, we would see one side start with screaming, hate, insults, curses, and then the other side would be like, okay, here are the economic packages. Can we vote on this? Fuck that vote. And then the progressions continue moving on. It's been, when we look at how much money is in the US and we look at how much money these corporations handle, yes, it's a lot. But then we look at the amount of money that Americans, private Americans, earn and spend. It's a lot of money. And that was the main thing that I wanted to look at, where we understand that there is a larger balance. I enter into economics knowing I don't know everything. I know there isn't a top 1% class that runs everything in my life. I know that there isn't a middle class that's suffering in majority, starving to death everywhere in America. I understand that there are large pots and pockets in America where these fucked up things are happening. But nationally, that's not what's going on.
Okay.
And so, as far as how that ties into what you originally said, you see the social continuum how you see it. I see the social continuum and the economics, how it's structured is, here's our nation, here's our economy, here's our land resources and transportation routes, here's our society inside. And when we destabilize the things inside of the very internal structure, which is the family and community component, we disintegrate or branch out everything else. And so I feel like it needs to be said that the hidden costs of trying to patch together American families and a work-life balance for 330 million people seems to be connected to this hidden bubble cost more so than the government wants oil or the 1% want to control things. Why? They want power. Why? Because they want their population and their nation to be number one. Why? Because if the number one currency is chosen over war, then that means most of the world is doing business and we're at the top of doing business. That's a much different thing from saying these are the kings, these are the peasants, fuck them, fuck them.
Right.
That's
That
a
makes sense.
whole different landscape.
Right.
And so when I realized what that was great. Now, as we move on into the modern age, when people come out into these circles to meet and the first thing they get is animosity, that's where they go. At first, when I was broke, when I was making 20 grand a year, it was something else. Now that I'm making a little bit more than that, my priorities have changed.
Yeah.
So I hope that answers your question. How does the social continuum affect our national economy? It destabilizes it and it causes it to have to branch together things. It's like you go on a road trip with your kids, and every time you stop for gas, the kids bring another pet into the car, disrupting, but also adding, but also enjoying.
Okay, yeah.
Quiet, and they're chilling, and you have turns out that pet may be a rare breed. It's a good thing that he stayed protected. It's, you know what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
can
So
go good, it can go into the bad, but either way, it's more that's being added as you're going.
mhm.
And so that's the situation that American people have put the government into. We just keep adding these extracurricular things that we want in addition to the things that we want to ignore that have already been paid for.
Yeah.
So, and then the government on the other end is guilty of their sins on their corruption and mishandling of funds
Right.
and
Right.
politicians and assassination,
Right.
all that
Yeah.
stuff. You know, the light
That,
stuff.
so it sounds like, it's just this continuing adjustments that they're
Mhm.
making, and then they have their own vision for the country too. And so, where does that head meet? What are those heads meet? Here's a 100-year agenda that we have. We're going to do this regardless, or hey, this is what the American people want to do, so maybe we need to scratch that 100-year plan. Do you feel like that they're operating on being able to adjust, or they're wanting to completely enforce?
Well, we just hit the end of the 100-year plan. One of the reasons why the internet community is so famous right now is because we
Part of that
are
plan.
how many of the conspiracies and theories and the dead set things. Like, I'm 37. I have been told 4 times in my life that the world was going to end.
Yeah,
Not have
yeah.
a problem, not have a
Right,
crash,
right. Yeah.
not there's going to be a market disruption.
Right.
End of the world.
Yeah.
All people dead. 4 times in my life. I've been told that from the news, people, but the government never told me that. So when I look at how things could develop into a worst case scenario, I step back and I realize that. Now, where do these heads meet up? Usually they meet in either DC, international conferences, or any type of major resource mining. You'll find a lot of billionaires and corporate heads at mining and resource events and
Well,
coalitions. And
I'm sorry. Let me. So if there's the government, and they're heavily influenced by the 1%, they have an agenda. Some will say the agenda now is climate change, sustainability, AI. And then you mentioned earlier though that we're like this moving mechanism, and like you use the example, if my kid got in the car with the new pet, we'll figure out a way to make this adjustment and continue on our journey. But I feel like how do they measure what's most important? What the American people say versus the 1% the government has as part of their agenda for the 100 years. Where do those heads meet?
I think I would like to, number one, like reverse what I said before.
Okay.
I wasn't trying to say this is what's happening. I was trying to let you know, this is how I have seen people see each other. When I went to any political head, because I went to the congressman here, I went to Hickalooper, I believe it. He's got a really weird name out here. We met with the mayor here, Jenny Arndt. I realized that most people from the middle and lower class, they see the 1% as an enemy. They see it as something fucked up. Meanwhile, the upper 1% that I have met personally, the celebrities, the corporate heads, I'll try to keep their names private, hotel owners, they see the American people and middle and lower class as children, violent children. And it's split between 3 groups in the upper class that I've met. One, they don't give a fuck as long as the markets are still going. The second ones are altruistic. They really want to reach out to help people, so on and so forth. And then you got the black cards, which are the corrupt politicians, so on and so forth. But the black cards, I realize, are split 50-50. Some of them, they avoid the American public because they have something to make out of it. The rest of them, I was very surprised to find a large amount of political leaders who avoid regular Americans out of straight fear. Straight fear. They're just like, I don't want to be hit with liquids. I don't want to be fire. I don't want to be attacked. I don't want my children missing. I don't want my property damaged. I don't want people waving cameras in my face, calling me faggot, nigga, this, that,
right.
They're like, I just want to make money and call it a day. That's all I want to do. And when I found those people, after I hammered them with all these questions that you're asking, at the end of the day, I just found somebody just trying to make money. They don't, I found a lot of people don't have any political direction. They're just making cash.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, that's a disconnection. That's something that needs to be talked about.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Um, so it was just, I wanted to let you know that when we were talking about sharing perspectives, I was more so sharing, hey, this is the reality that I've seen based off of the
Mhm.
people I've met.
Yeah.
And when I meet civilians who make less than $75,000, it's usually 75,000 a year. They usually say the government, they, them, enemies out there somewhere fucking up my life here.
Mhm.
As opposed to on the other side of that is, yo, I just don't want the problems. I just don't want the protests. I don't want the burning buildings. I just don't want that. And so it was a whole different thing getting to see that. But that was to answer the perspective
Yeah.
question.
That's good too, because it does bring things into better perspective. Because, like you said, we will stare up and be like, they're pieces of shit. They don't care about us, and they have their own level of thinking. Like you said, some of them really don't give a shit. Some do, and then some just want to avoid all the bullshit and build a legacy. And that's what we are arguing about. We're saying, hey, F y'all, we want to build a legacy, but y'all not letting us, and so it speaks to so many different, the example you made just speaks to so many different levels of what's actually happening. But so we're looking at the society continuum. If y'all just coming in, I have a theory that we are in a point in time to where we can clearly look at where we have gone, where we're at now, where we're gone is the past, where we're at now is the present, and where we want to go. And I feel like millennials have experienced like some difficult moments like the baby boomers have, and they figured out a way for boomers to generate this wealth in this country. And now what's it going to look like moving forward for millennials and the younger generations behind us? And so Darrin and I were talking about the society continuum, what that's going to look like, what it could look like. I would like to see more and new legacy involved. I would like to see our country naturally evolve like it should. I'd like to see the pendulum swing and see more influence from those that descend from slavery. I feel like those that descend from slavery have had an unfair shake at the American dream. Some will say, well, hey, you got athletes, you have billionaire entertainers. You guys are doing better than what you've ever done before, considering slavery. However, when we look at the bottom half of our group, we still see people locked out of the American dream through structures, social structures, as far as, like lending practices, home loans. We can even argue that some law enforcement, they narrow down on the Negro because he's a target. And so there are things that we can see that, present a barrier to the bottom half of African Americans or ADOS people experiencing the American dream. That is my argument. That is my perspective. I try to remove the feelings from it and work within educating myself by reading, doing research. And I've done that for the last 5 years, and there's more for me to go to do. And I'm looking forward to that. Now, with all that in mind, like, do you feel like looking at the Negro, understanding the pendulum, understanding we're in a continuum, and seeing how the new legacies may be a positive influence to the future of America, could reparations strengthen that American social continuum? Could reparations uplift America to see its best days?
Those are two different questions. No and yes.
Okay, so no to what?
No to I do not believe that strengthening the current social continuum would help through the lens of reparations. I do believe that paying reparations through economic packages, funding, and it's directed and tracked, would have a much better impact on the nation as a whole, especially if it was like established in a way to get there. It would have to be something that prepared the nation as a whole to see what would happen, and it would have to be a step progression thing because African Americans would then be used as the stepping platform for the other um, nationalities and identities who have been wronged. And lo and behold, the moment that we started talking about reparations, here come a large group of Caucasian Americans looking to change their demographic
Mm.
into a protected class.
Okay. So you're saying if this ADOS group of people saying, "Hey, we should be a protected class," and you're saying white Americans would say the same thing?
I read this thing called to answer what you're saying. Long story short, not to the fault of the African American community. This is a fault of more so white society.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have found that anything that's given to a protected class is thereby defined, and then after a certain amount of time goes by, the majority, usually Caucasians, will seek to redefine or
Mm-hmm.
blend definitions in order for a group of them to get in
To
on the pot
benefit.
of gold.
Right.
Um, Instead of seeing it as an economic platform to uplift an entire people who were robbed of generational wealth and economic
Wow.
opportunity.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting to see in that way. The both of us support reparations. The both of us have seen the need for it, as well as the need for African American community support and integrity.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a very good conversation to have. But that's my thoughts on reparations. No, I don't think it would help strengthen this current social continuum because this social continuum is based off of division and individual
Mm.
action and disintegration of the family unit. I do think it would help the nation because once people have the ability to overcome the circumstances that distract them away from building a family, building a business, and owning a home, um, I really do believe that we would dwarf the amount of people who don't want to have a home, a business, and a family because those things no longer signify being a part of a community anymore. They just
Mm.
represent I have a house, I have a business, and I lead my family
Right.
instead
Yeah.
of my family is a part of this community. Our house
Right.
is a part of the city. We have a business that is integrated with these other businesses in the neighborhood.
Wow.
One of the arguments against reparations is how we would spend it. They don't know how we would spend it because they've taken away every opportunity for us to have it
Yeah.
as a group.
Right.
So now, when we're coming into this with statistics on the majority and where Black America is,
Mm-hmm.
we're looking at where Black America is without full government and social support
That's
to
right. Yeah.
be a part of the national economy.
Right.
Um, and so far, like overall, it's tracked pretty well. The social choices that people make individually with their families, with divorce, with their inheritances, with their education, that's a completely separate conversation to have. Um, except for when we talk about building reparations into the national economic cycle. So
Yeah.
that's my main thing.
Yeah.
Those are my
Yeah.
thoughts. Answer to your question.
That's good, man. That's damn in depth. I didn't want to hold you for more than an hour, and plus my kids are about to come in, and we're expecting a storm. And I don't know if you've ever been to Oklahoma, and I can't wait for you to come because you said you're gonna come.
I
But
got
when
you.
we, bro, anytime we see weather in the damn forecast that might be dangerous, the whole damn city shut down. So, but so they'll be coming home pretty soon, and so I've got a couple more questions I want to ask you.
Yeah, hit me. I got time, man. Hit me with it.
Um, and it's back to the reparations thing. Actually, no, it's back to the current continuum. So do you feel like we're on a trajectory to be sustainable? Because some people will say like, hey, America is coming up to like a collapse. America's dollar is about to collapse. There's about to be this new superpower in China. People are bailing out on America. People can't trust America. America is seeing the most debt that it's ever seen in its existence. In our current society continuum, do you feel like it's sustainable? And if not, then what are some changes that can help make this more sustainable? Do you feel
Um,
like one being higher paying wages could that help alleviate some of the debt that we're crisis that we're experiencing?
I would like to highlight to many Americans that to answer that question. One, yeah, there's a lot of bad stuff happening. Two, there's a lot of good stuff happening as well. On as
Yeah,
far
it's
as what
true.
the U.S. is involved in. When it comes to being sustainable, I do believe that we have a future for sustainability. Not only because of how Americans are performing as a whole. Like, yeah, I don't agree how we spend money. I don't agree how we move money. But our national footprint is still pretty good compared to the rest of the world.
Mm.
And right now, we don't have an option on being sustainable. We are economically sustainable by the fact that 60% of the world's money is invested in the American dollar.
Mm.
So 60% of 8 billion people is about 5 billion, and 330 million people using 5 billion people's money and economic expansion as a backdrop is one of the perfect ways for our society to get some time to grow up
Mm.
and learn how we're
Mm.
manage the stuff inside. Um, so that's mainly how I would look at that situation for it.
Let me ask you this, and you mentioned something that kind of I felt it in my socks.
Mhm.
Society time to grow up. What does that look like to you? And I have an opinion on what that might look like, but what does it look like to you? Society time to grow up.
If
Like
it
what?
looks, it looks like what most people. Okay, on the multi-stratagem thing is what we're trying to do now, which is where we have some people gay, some people straight, some people black, some people fat, some people white, some people skinny, some people are sports stars, some people are lawyers. We have allowed a large amount of people to choose where they work, what they do, how they do. But we didn't really look at once those people grow up and have kids, if they chose not to get a degree and buy a house, now they had kids and they just put those kids out. We
Mm,
didn't
yeah.
look at the 5 generation fallout of free choice.
Mm,
But we did look at we do not want the tyranny of absolute government control, which says you're 8 years old, you go to this school, you're going to be a plumber for life. We didn't want that either. So
and there's countries out there that kind of do that, right? They kind of direct where they need people to fall into the industry, right?
most of any country that is working well with its national identity usually has a consolidated base, meaning they have a consolidated base of people who live the same, eat the same, were raised with the same beliefs, make the same economic decisions, marry the same, date the same, eat the
Look the
same,
same,
look the same. And now we're coming over here and we're doing this with
right?
America. This is a new
Yeah,
system.
yeah.
It's a new
I see.
system. It's a new way of getting people to work with.
Mm,
Once we figured out how to do this multi-stratagems coexistence and allow people to be interested in each other um, as human beings, that's when it'll come together. When we learn how to tolerate each other.
mm,
I'll put it like this. Everything you've seen people feel when they drive past homeless people, some people are too busy, some people they don't care, some people are in a rush. That's how the 1% feels about us.
dang. Woo.
Everything everything you feel about and for corruption, everything you feel about running a stop sign, that's what a billionaire feels about fucking up $100 million deal. We run stop signs because we're like, I can afford a $200 fine.
Right,
And then get mad at a billionaire, be like, I can afford a $2 million fine.
right. Wow.
It's a mindset. We have elevated America to the point that we can control how we do things with our mindset.
Mm,
And now, for some reason, people just want to ignore that. So
right.
that's why I share these things to let people know like the goal is to break down barriers and work together
Yeah.
at the end of the day. And right now, most of those end of the world things are not going to happen because 60% of the people on earth are voting for America to be the top of the economic classes.
Mm,
That's why everything you said, new superpower,
new
new. There's been a
legacy.
bunch of new banks that came
Yeah.
out, but you still with the old one, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Dang,
I
wow.
still got that internet bank, dog.
Still got it. Still got it. There's a couple new internet companies in town, right? But you still with Old Faithful, right?
Right, right,
Still got Old
right.
Faithful.
Yeah, I see what you're going with
Okay.
that. I see where you're going with that. Yeah.
I'm just saying, just there is a quality to economic health as a nation in
Hmm.
taking care of each other.
Yeah.
And there's a quality to understanding why we are making these choices. And I don't believe in absolute tyranny and government control, but there needs to be something that forces us as Americans to come together, have these conversations, start spitting out solutions, spitting out budgets, spitting out policies, getting neighbors to work together to clean up their communities, having people redo the roads, picking up the trash, taking people out of these homes and bringing them home.
Mm. Yeah.
And so, because there's not going to, as long as there are homes for people who don't belong in society, there will be no home for people who want to be home.
Right.
There will be no homes. As long as there are homes outside of homes, there will be no homes.
Right. Right.
And so I'm letting people know
Wow.
that in the most family sense that I can. And that's why I let you know, man, because you really do hit these hammers on the head. But I see, let me answer these other questions for you real quick. You
Yeah.
got, will we need to define this question later on? Okay, is there a difference in generational, social, and individual pressures? Yes, there are. That's one of the things that causes conflicts. Case in point, you have 10 people, right? 5 people have a degree, 5 people don't, right? Out of each of these 5, 3 people have the drive to go whatever. So you have 2 groups, and now you got 4 groups, right?
Mm-hmm.
The gaps between what each of those groups have accelerates as the whole group gets 10 grand. So everybody in this group gets 10 grand. They're still in the same life situations that they're in.
Right.
Next week, everybody gets 10 grand. They're still in the life situations that they're in. And so now it's like, okay, cool. The gaps in between them are going to do. If 10 people started on the same platform, the things that would be fucking them up is family time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
If 10 people start on different platforms, it's the things that are different from them that be fucking up their family time.
Right.
And so, like, that's where we're coming from on this. Learning that balance in between is different. A 60-year-old white dude who served in Vietnam and all his friends are dead, but he's got grandkids who don't understand him and don't want to do business with him, versus a black kid on the street just got out of a bad relationship. He's about to join the military. Those are 2 completely different generations, but they're going into the military. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. One's stable and one's unstable, right?
or they're both unstable in a different type of way.
Right. Right. Okay.
So, because the black kid has his all family, but he doesn't have his own. He doesn't have kids. He doesn't have grandkids. He doesn't have money, but he does have grandparents. He does have cousins. He does have brothers. He does have that. Meanwhile, the white dude has grandkids, but he has no brothers, no cousins. Parents are dead. His brothers are dead. His friends are dead. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So those are
Yeah.
2 completely different things that are happening. One of the things that I would note for going right back, is there a difference in generational, social, and individual pressures? I'll put it like this, and I'll give an example for you. We go to Afghanistan. They make an all-female team, female pilots, female drivers, female translators, female everything to reach out to the Afghan women. They get there. 9 white women go up in front of them. This is for the individual pressures, so on and so forth. 9 white women go up there. Some of them 30, some of them 40, some of them been in the military for 20 years. Some of them have a degree. Some of them are a pilot. They get asked, how's America? Oh, it's great. I got my family. We go golfing. We got this. We got blah, blah, so on and so forth. One woman, her name was Latoya Congress. She was 25. Afghan women turned to her and said, what is life like for women of color in America?
Completely different answer.
6 months later, the entire female engagement team was dissolved.
Wow. What, did she share too much truth,
1
or?
year, 1 year later, after that interview, the entire U.S. military pulled out of Afghanistan.
Wow.
When most people in America, in between those individual pressures that you're talking about, they don't understand that there are more Black women who are mothers in the world than there are people in the US.
Really?
Yes, there are more Asian
Wow.
pregnant women than there are African Americans.
Wow.
So like understanding like how we equate to each other in different stuff. So to answer your question, yes, there are. There are a lot of differences in generational, social, and individual pressures. And they
Yeah.
push people away from what I call the tier one plan. The tier one plan is
Yeah.
basically
Talk to
it's
us a
just
little about that. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. Dive in that real quick. The tier, because
the tier
I
one
love the
plan.
analogy there behind
You
that.
want the tier one plan? You want it?
I
All
do. We want the tier one
right.
plan, Darrin. Tell us what it
It's
is, big dog.
it's everything you've seen people fight against. It's the Bible, the law, living with family, friends, and working with the community. It's
Mm.
it's following the Ten Commandments. It's avoiding sexual impurity. It's also, if I look at the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not lie, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, thou shalt not give false testimony. When I look at those, and I look at the opposite side, I look at all the marketplaces attached to defying the Ten Commandments. Thou shalt not kill, right? We have lawyers, defendants, guns, knives.
Right.
We have movies and shows dedicated to depicting murder on a 24/7 thing. We have music, we have advertisements, we have t-shirts, we have apparel, we have merch. We have the largest amount of serial killers in the US. We have a market for it now. And what do serial killers garner? Fame. And what do they do after they get the fame? They get a book and a movie. And then where does that money come from? Not the government. It comes from the people.
Right.
Usually not in the 1%.
Wow. So we're
Usually
driving.
literally driving it.
Wow.
It is not the US government. When we talk about they and them, it is not the US government who made a movie about Ted Bundy. It is not the US government who made shows about kids overdosing on aphrodisiacs and fucking at festivals. It was not the government that I'm just saying
No,
the
makes
government
sense,
in
man.
sponsoring Burning Man. Like that's
Right.
not, you understand? So
Yeah.
those individual pressures. We already talked about, could reparations strengthen the American social continuum? Yes,
Yeah.
it could.
Let's hit on that financial literacy before addressing personal habit. We talked about just now the individual responsibility, right? The individual responsibility.
Yeah, we'll take my
versus,
side out. Let's focus on your side.
Well, no, I mean, like, I think that's what the personal habit it falls under, is that individual responsibility. But I get the sense, and what I've noticed is, we see a lot of people saying, "Hey, reparations won't work unless you have financial literacy," or people saying, "Hey, the best way to economic freedom is financial literacy." But I feel like they skip addressing personal habit. I know for me, we've identified ways that we can get ahead financially. But it all boiled down to changing my habits. So with that being said, do you feel like, and have you seen throughout the internet and other places where they talk about financial literacy but leave out the importance of addressing personal habits?
Well, one of the most frustrating things about that is that most Caucasian Americans who have benefited from generational wealth are not going to have to go through the same obstacles to get their generational wealth as African Americans are going to have to go through in the present day. Most Caucasian Americans I've met, yes, their grandfathers may have worked hard. They may have been Irish, hauling carriages barehanded through mining colonies. I get it. I got that. However, when we talk in the aspects of generational wealth, okay, got it. Everyone's descendant worked hard. Not everyone's descendants worked hard. But when we turn back around, I realized how many Caucasian Americans I met who were given their generational wealth. And their ancestors were given their generational wealth. Right. And then, yeah, some people squandered it, some people spent it, some people whatever, but there was so much of it to the point that many of them could not bottom out. And that was one of the most heart-wrenching things for me to realize when I made money. When I made money and I got around like rich white folk, and I realized that there are rich white people who are allowed to crash cars, drink, beat wives, whatever, especially white women. When I found out the social freedom
Dang, that's a word right there.
That leaks into their economic template, that leaks into their generational wealth, that leaks into their long-term lifestyles. And I realized they could crash cars, cheat on their husbands, they could drink, fuck, smoke, they could
Right, do whatever the hell they want to, basically.
whatever they
That's so
want.
true, bro.
Right?
That's so true.
I was like, yo, what? Going out. It wasn't until I went to Germany that I realized they had a police task force for white women who left their children alone at the house.
Wow.
Neighbors find out and they find out where she at. They got to go down to the club. They had a certain amount of police set aside for that.
Wow.
And so when I realized, I was like, oh, okay, got it. So coming back to the could reparations strengthen the American social continuum? It can, when you bring the people who have it to one platform and say, hey, we finally get this money. Here are some plans. Here are some plans for your city, for your neighborhood, for your state, and for the federal government as a nation. Here's how we work. So I do believe in the financial literacy aspect. But I do want to note that financial literacy 200 years ago for white people is going to be completely different from financial literacy for Black people today.
Facts,
and
yeah.
They had a consolidated group. They had people who ate the same, grew up the same, had the same stuff. They didn't have the same amount of psychological and distance barriers that we have now.
Right.
And so we need the government's help to overcome that. I could go into that for a while. But could reparations strengthen the American social continuum? The current social continuum based off of individualism and separate divisions, no. Making the social continuum that can benefit the majority of Americans and look at the things that we're talking about, yes. So you have society wants the experiences, but do they want to
pay the price?
No.
That's the hard part, man. Paying that price. Listen, taking it to financial responsibility. Like, I want a sandwich, but I also want to buy a house. And so do I want it or do I want that sandwich? You know what I'm saying? Like, do I want to go eat these ribs or I want to buy the house? And so, yeah, man, like, what are your thoughts on that? Society wants experience, but do we want to pay the price?
Michael Jordan answered that question the best. When they asked Michael Jordan during the early 2000s, right before he was about to go back to the Wizards, this was right after he had retired off of everything. He was good. He was getting into golfing and racing. And they asked him basically what was driving him to focus on these things. And he went over a whole bunch of inspiring things. He talked about grinding. He talked about the competition. He talked about the mental mindset. But then he mentioned something that I'll never forget. He started talking about all the places he went and how people didn't believe him about getting on the grind. I could not believe that Michael Jordan said that he told people he had money and business plans for him, and they said no. Michael Jordan?
Right.
I was, okay. There are very few people I would listen to without any type of however that is. But when it comes to money, I would definitely listen to Michael Jordan at some point.
Right.
So society wants the experiences, but do they want to pay the price? Kobe said the same thing. Many presidents have said the same thing. They note how many people drop out of the race, quit, blame other people, don't follow. I forgot to tell you when I asked. My son is, for some reason, only texting me now. And I love this kid. I do. I really do. I swear. Kids,
you got to run?
No, I don't have to run. Society wants experiences, but do they want to pay the price? No, they don't. They don't. That's a long story short. No, they don't.
Yeah. So how do we encourage people to say, hey, let's pay this price, this one generation? Because I'm giving into it. Like I want to yield more positive results. I want to have more experiences, and I've noticed that I've got to make some changes to have more experiences, more positive results. One being, I want to own a home. I want to own a ranch. I have big dreams. And so I've got to pay the price at some point. Right. And I feel like there's a lot of people that I've grown up with, peers of mine that want the same. Be it that we remove some of those barriers so they can accomplish their dreams and such, but also, we've got to be willing to pay that price. And so how do we motivate? How do you encourage? And people like me might say, man, I want to do these things, but the damn government's against me, or the damn system's against me, or the damn social structure's against me. Do you have any words of encouragement for people like me that might think like that, or people like, that might think like that way?
I would tell anybody who thinks like that, take a deep breath and really understand that the worst case scenario is not happening. The worst case scenario is that people are kicking down your door, taking all your money from you, and taking your kids. That's not happening. So you have your children. Okay, cool. All right. What do you have that you can continue on with? And obviously there is a truth and a reality to what you have said that we are up against. Why is there no mention on slavery or the enslavement of others in the Ten Commandments? Because it was biblically acceptable.
It was what?
It was biblically acceptable. It was acceptable during that time. Right now, here's the thing. There are things that were acceptable in both times. In this time, we allow homelessness. We allow people to wear things that defy the Lord and the U.S. government. We allow OnlyFans. We allow prostitution. We allow gay marriage. Back then, they allowed slavery. So, and that's right. Just how that is. But yeah, to answer that question. Sorry, we got sidelined.
No, you good. Yeah, you good. I didn't know it was going to pop up when I clicked on it. But
no,
back to the words of encouragement.
To the words of encouragement. Follow the Lord's decrees. Stand up for yourself in the right ways. Look out for your family. And look out for your friends and community. And if you do that enough, you will find a beat. You will find a cycle of good experiences. And once you enforce that cycle of good experiences, you give it to other people and you bring them on the cycle.
Yeah.
The opposite is it's easy to do bad cycle experiences. Ignore each other all day. And then at the nighttime, be like, hey, let's go drink. Hell yeah, I'll be there in 10 minutes.
Right. Yeah.
The same excitement, the same incentivization that we have to go drink and go out and have a good time, we need to be able to bring that energy and that focus back into the good things.
Right.
And there really isn't a price to pay when we work together. Individually, if you want that house, yeah, you got to grind, you got to save. But if you got 7 people together, made up a collective bargaining agreement to get leverageable assets, and then went to a bank and asked them to approve that loan, and had 7 people get $3.5 million, and then use that money to go buy the house.
Wow.
And then
leveraging your relationships. Yeah.
And then refinance those properties to each other. That's stuff people can do with 200, 300,000. They don't need 16 million to be able to do that. And so that's good. Work together, brainstorm, find people, meet up, Eventbrite, hit us up.
Yeah. Holla, for real. Holla at us. Yeah. Because you're working on some things that kind of that consist of a collective. Tell us a little bit about what you're working on right now.
The main thing that I work on is the transition of veterans, which I realized mutated into what we call the in-processing center, which in the military, when people join the military, they have to go down to an in-processing center. And at that in-processing center, they explain laws, regulations, safety. They bring them through safety gunfire courses. They make them learn first aid, and then they make them learn taxes. You have to get a bank account. You have to learn about stocks, and then you go join the military. And we built that something for veterans. Nice. When they get out of the military, they learn the new financial markets. They learn the new way to buy a house.
That's beautiful.
And then if their visa runs out so we have a few veterans who work in like Thailand and so on and so forth. If their visa runs out and they need someone with a clean visa to go there and handle their issues, we can bring that back. And the way that works is sometimes a little bit more complicated than I just explained, because we find some people like to visa jump. Some people have a security clearance. Some people have to stay out of the U.S. for 11 months for taxes. So that's navigating the obstacles of making sure veterans are financially stable is
Yeah.
what my main business propagation does. My main business proposals do,
Yeah.
and that's it's made a lot of good progress. We giving a comprehensive checkup on all of my friends um, brought back a lot of peace and a lot of good in my life. And now I just suggest that to other people. So that's what Scott Free Trades is doing. We have right now we have one veteran owned operation that has $440,000 in real estate assets and $90,000 in automobile and equipment. I'm not going to put all his business out there. We have another veteran who just relocated out of $80,000 and is now getting his medical benefits back.
Oh man.
On the unfortunate end, we found, I can't say the exact number because we're still going through their cases. We found a large number of veterans with health endangering conditions that had not been seen before.
Mm.
We found quite a few people with cancers, lung issues, embolisms, blood clots. We found people with organ failure, renal failure. We found some veterans that we thought were working on contract, found out they were in the hospital somewhere. Hey man,
Wow.
anyone helping you? No. All right, cool. We're gonna help you. And it was something else to come across that, and we're definitely consolidating more. So we were very happy for the people who made money, but the largest amount of veterans that we found mostly had medical issues, were in the hospital, disabled, not walking, strokes, seizures. They had
And
money, yeah.
all
So
that could have been preventable too, huh? If they knew about the resources that were available, would you say?
they knew about the resources, they knew about the plan, if they knew
Yeah.
how to go about it, and it was very difficult to um, have them in that aspect and go from there. And yeah, and then I forgot to answer that one question for the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments were made for the people who were passing through the desert. Moses brought down the Ten Commandments, and they were geared toward managing that main aspect of the people there. They didn't really have slaves in the Israelite people who were leaving because they were slaves. The Ten Commandments were for freed slaves. That's what it
Mm.
was
So whenever they were freed, they needed to live by these circumstances or these commandments,
for. Well,
essentially.
the Israelites ended up in Egypt because they didn't listen to God initially. So in
Mm.
God's eyes, this is just like, okay, this is phase two. Like y'all didn't listen to me. Phase two, you got to go serve in slavery.
Yeah.
So that was slavery, I guess, was meant to be the hell of endurance on earth that would be temporary for like 2 or 3 generations, and then they would go back, or however many generations, and then they would go back. It was meant to be an indentured servitude thing between nations that won and lost. It was not meant to be this top down class we humiliate and exploit and then stretch out and then exterminate this entire thing. That was a man-made thing. In the covenant of master, slave, owner, landlord, so on and so forth, it was more so about the responsibilities of each of the tribes as they went along than it was about the treatment of people because they're slaves. That was something that people built up on. And in the, to answer Jamal's question, it's not in the Ten Commandments. However, the referencing of slaves honoring their masters and masters treating their slaves well and honoring the time requirements, honoring the health conditions, making sure their slaves can see their family, not binding people in chains. There's a difference between slaves and prisoners. When war escalated and the populations expanded, and then prisons and slave became more synonymous as far as people who are not in the regular social circles, that's where we got the psychological barriers of slave here, master there.
Mm.
But there are several passages throughout Second Timothy, First Timothy, Galatians, as well as the book of Exodus about how slaves are supposed to be treated, to answer that. But so there is something in the Bible about how slavery is wrong in this context, wrong in that context. And then another thing to speak on is God gave us free will. There are a large amount of human beings who will willingly choose to be a slave to something or someone.
Oh, right. Yeah. Facts. Yeah. Yeah.
And so like that's so accommodating.
Big facts.
So it's just like, okay, cool. There's a difference between stripping the individual right from the fruit of knowledge that God said don't eat. And so now it's like, yeah, now we have it. And he said there are over 600 laws in the Torah, and it was legal to enslave throughout the Torah. It's also legal to enslave in many countries and religions. I mean, look at Korea. Korea has had over 1,500 years of uninterrupted slavery.
Wow. That's
and
great.
they had,
Wait. Korea still has slaves?
You didn't know Korea had slavery?
The hell no, I didn't know that. What?
Oh,
wow.
Man. They
well, so America essentially has slaves too, right? If you're incarcerated,
look, man.
You're forced to slave. You have to do slave labor. I think that's something I read.
Korean
we're gonna have to save that for a different topic because that's deep.
That's a whole different. And listen, yeah,
I'm gonna have Jamal. He's gonna come on. Brother Jamal's gonna come on here real soon, and we're gonna chop it up about that, man.
Honestly, he really does blow me away with how much he knows.
Oh my goodness, for real. Yeah. Both of y'all. That's why I want to make it a common occurrence to have you guys on to chop it up. But man, with that being said, man, how can we support you on your cause to better support veterans?
Any veterans that you come across who are in trouble or at risk, immediately just refer them to their local representatives first. Just getting them into the system is the biggest hurdle and push. After that, then you can start looking for individual companies like mine. But the main big push is to get them in front of their VA doctors, in front of their VA social workers, and get them to those appointments. And if you support veterans, help them get to their appointments. That is the main thing, because
too.
I know it's basic, but it's one of the biggest things. It's the biggest thing. And honestly, straight up, without making it weird, assume that every veteran you talk to has a suicide risk. Because every veteran you meet has 5 to 16 years of experience with anti-suicide. So they know how to hide the signs. They know how to make it look like it's not a thing, and then boom, they're gone. I would say those two things are the biggest things I would look out for. Get them connected to the resources in your community and be on the lookout for mental health crises, but not like pressing them, but support and help. Those are the main two things I would say. That will bring more veterans in front of me than anything else.
Beautiful. Darrin, man, it's been a pleasure, an honor, and a fun experience again, brother. I appreciate you for dropping gems. You've got a wealth of knowledge that I feel like the world needs to continue to hear. Obviously, we're going to be evolving in our thinking, but I think at the end of the day, you have a vision that's broad enough to really put in perspective as far as being able to help people fit inside of a new way of thinking, and also a potential way of how society might go. You know, I feel like having potential options and contingency plans and of what might happen serves anybody's purpose. I think, you know, stock market tycoons and people that, you know, study the stock market, you know, successful people look at contingencies, I feel like, and look at possibilities. And I think the more that we talk about possibilities of the future, the more that we can better prepare. And so you do a great job at sharing your knowledge and information, which can fit into anybody's future plan. And so I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you so much, man. I'm happy to come on, and I'm looking forward to the other conversations we have.
Likewise, brother. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, man. Have a good day. Peace.
You too, brother. Later. Yo, there you go. There you have it. You heard it yourself from the man himself, Darrin Scott Evans, Fort Collins, Colorado. You know, that's my dude, man. Shout out to Jamal. Shout out to Gabe. Jamal's brother I met out in Colorado. Gabe, he's one of my old teammates. I talked to Gabe about him coming on and talk about our sports career together, and where he ended up at in college and what he's doing now. He's doing a great job out in real estate. So if you guys are looking for real estate out there in AZ, holla at me. I know somebody named Gabe. What is your last name, Gabe? Gabe will hook it up. Great dude. I've known him he was one of my college teammates. Gabe Hernandez out in AZ does real estate. Y'all lock in with Gabe. And Jamal had to come through with his deep question. Shout out to Jamal. I consider Jamal one of my mentors. But that's my dog too, man. And Michael Anthony Tapman, I appreciate y'all for being in the chat. But man, I wanted to talk to Darrin about the current society continuum. I know I said I didn't want to go into like this philosophical phase of, podcasting, but I feel like I'm called to do that. I feel like I'm called to have as deep conversations as my mind can allow me. Now, I do need to do more reading. I do reading, but I do need to do more reading, because sometimes my verbiage that comes out of my mouth is limited to my level of thinking. And my thinking is like, where are we going now? Right? Like, what is all this for? What is the purpose of all of this? What is the meaning to it? And once you start asking those questions, for me, I've asked, now what? I started this podcast 5 years ago, and I was inspired. I feel like God moved me in the direction of sharing my thoughts and feelings so that a way I can better move and navigate through life. I'm a heavy, deep thinker, and I've been through a lot. There's a lot of trauma that I have yet to deal with, and there's some trauma that I've already dealt with. But at the end of the day, I think like being able to express my thinking and seeing if other people think that way, or learning from other people that think differently, helps answer some of the questions that I have. And some people are like, hey, man, don't be too hard on yourself. Hey, man, just relax. Hey, man, why are you always in your head? I feel like that's what I've been created to do. And so I'm going to ride these damn wheels I'm going to ride this damn car until the wheels fall off. And, I hope my kids know that I love them, but my mind might drive me crazy, and I'm okay with that at this point, because I really want to be not necessarily solution oriented, but result driven. I don't know if we'll always find the solutions to things, but finding a result, even if it's one child that we're supporting, one answer that we're providing, those are results to me. And so solutions says answering all the problems, and I think that's something we'll never see. I don't think we'll ever answer every one of the world's problems, but I think that we might be able to find solutions to some of the world's problems. But to continue, I feel like that's where we're at right now. The bottom of my soul, we are at a pivotal point of the continuum. I call it a continuum curve. I don't know exactly what that means yet, but God's put it on my heart and mind to really kind of follow that. And it started right at the peak of my recovery of drugs. Started thinking more about where we're at in society. How do I move forward to better support my family? How is that going to fit? How am I going to fit within my community? How is that going to work within a broken community? How do you uplift a broken community so that way you can better fit into your continuum? But I feel like we all have the ability, and we all have a responsibility to shape the continuum. And I think that's going to require some vision. So stay tuned, man. We're going to be in the season. I don't think we'll ever leave the season of Continuum. So I'll have plenty of guests on. If we do take a break in the season, it's going to be for like a month. I apologize. I haven't been as active as I'd like. Life has been busy for me and my family. There's been a lot going on every weekend, but I do have great guests aligned. And if you haven't changed your mind because I've taken so long, I still would like you to come on. Still want to talk about friendships, relationships, race, the future, the economy, therapy, mental health. I think that's all important to a continuum. Now, let me just say this too. I don't think this is all in an effort to be perfect in any kind of way, but to be more sustainable as a species and to create new legacy. I think the 1% of the world has kind of been busy shaping our futures. And I feel like they have yet to come down to my community and other communities to say, hey, what do you want? What do you need? And what does your future look like? And so all that's important to me. And I think that from every angle that we can speak to it from, the better off that our listeners can be, and better off that I feel like that I'd be too. So I appreciate y'all for tapping in. Don't forget, everybody has vision. The question is, who are you and what are you looking for? Love you guys. Stay tuned.